This video is about the Massachusetts Reformatory and how the Department of Corrections around 1978, but officially in 1980, illegally abolished the Massachusetts Reformatory without telling the judicial system and without permission from legislature, so that 500 sentences a year, all the way up to 1994, when the Massachusetts Reformatory sentence was repealed, so that the courts could no longer sentence anybody there. What happened was in 1800s, the late 1800s, the prison at Concord was the state prison, and they opened up a jail in Charlestown, Massachusetts, and they had to transfer all the state sentenced prisoners there because the Concord prison was falling apart. It was an old prison. So what they did was they established a reformatory, and there were no state inmates, state sentenced inmates mixed in at the reformatory. There was only two prisons, at the state level, the reformatory and the state prison at Charlestown. And there was a riot at the state prison at Charlestown around 1950, and it was overcrowded. So around 1955, around there, they decided to revamp the entire Massachusetts correctional system at the state level, not the jails, House of Corrections, but at the state level. And Governor Herder, Christian Archibald Herder of Massachusetts, put together a committee to investigate the prison system and make their determinations, and it was called the Wessel Committee. And at that time, the Department of Corrections wanted more control over inmates sentenced to the prison system. Basically, give them a maximum term, and then give them to us, and then we'll decide if they should be released or not. And this was under 1955 Senate document number 750. In page 2, paragraph 6, it says, "It will completely revive our sentencing procedure to provide greater flexibility on the part of a trained correctional staff in developing and carrying out programs of education and rehabilitation." Paragraph 7, "It will unify the control of all correctional institutions under a single competent administration and permit a reorganized professional correctional staff to carry out the aims of modern penology and making good citizens instead of potential enemies of the community." Page 30, paragraph 3. The best correctional systems are utilizing a central reception center, and it is better equipped to meet the inmates' needs. Paragraph 4 of page 30. This is a step Massachusetts must take. It requires that all commitments be made to the legal custody of the Commissioner of Corrections, and not a specific institution, as is now the case. The designation of a central reception center for the receiving of all commitments of male offender, and the change in title of all institutions so that they are known as mass correctional institutions and identified by location. The governor wanted the courts to no longer commit offenders to a specific institution and wanted all the criminal statutes to be changed to not sentence offenders to a specific institution, but instead have the courts commit all male offenders to the care and custody of the Commissioner of Corrections. Senate document number 750, page 148, section 98, 254, 285, 286, and 289. The governor's proposal was that after the laws are changed and offenders are no longer sentenced to a specific institution, then the commissioner would establish each of his institutions to operate for a certain type of offender, and a classification team would be established to determine which offender would be suitable for each institution. Under Governor Herter's proposal, the classification process would be done at a newly established central reception and diagnosis center where all male offenders would be received directly from the court. 1955 Senate document number 750, page 2, paragraph 6, 7, page 30, paragraph 3, page 113, sections 10 through 31. In 1955, the idea of a central reception center was new in Massachusetts, though all institutions in Massachusetts have always had reception units in their prisons to receive newly committed offenders. I wrote that in as a note. The Senate number 55, House number 3100, did not accept the proposal to change all the criminal statutes to have the court make the commit order not to be either to the state prison or the reformatory, but instead to the care and custody of the Commissioner of Corrections. So the Senate didn't change it, the laws the way they were. So nothing changed as far as the reformatory punishment and the state prison punishment. But the House did vote to change the names of all the institutions and unify them. Legislature also changed restriction for sentences to the reformatory. And instead of offenders having to be under the age of 30 to be eligible for the courts to commit them to the reformatory, the courts were now allowed to sentence offenders over 30 years of age to the reformatory. But pursuant to statistical reports by the Department of Corrections, by 1971, there were only a couple of inmates who were actually over 30. In the 80s, when the courts and DLC were working to do away with the reformatory sentence, there were a lot more offenders over 30 being given reformatory sentence. So Governor Herter wanted the statutes of criminal crimes to be changed to word whoever is sentenced to an indefinite sentence rather than whoever is sentenced to the state prison or whoever is sentenced to the state reformatory. Now, the legislature refused to give this power to the Department of Corrections, so they stole it, and they got caught in 1985. What they were doing was they were so mad that the legislature wouldn't give them the Department of Corrections this power that they started letting out child rapists and who were sentenced to 20 years at the reformatory. 20 years. They weren't given light sentences. 20 years. Okay, and the idea of the reformatory sentences you can give 30, 40, whatever amount you want. But for anything over 20, your first review by the parole board is after 2.5 years. Now, the parole board is supposed to review these inmates and decide whether or not they're reformed. With a state prison sentence, there's a minimum sentence given by the court and a maximum. So at the minimum sentence, then they're entitled to be reviewed by parole. But parole is not an entitlement. It's not a right. You know, parole board could tell you, we're not giving you a parole because we don't like your shirt. So you see movies about the parole department where they have these big meetings and discussions, and parole don't have to give anybody a parole. They're not. So what they were doing was letting out these rapists and child molesters, and then when they got caught doing it again, because they weren't reformed, they had done maybe 2.5 years, and they were being let out, and they had 17 years left remaining on their sentences. What they wanted to do was humiliate the judges, humiliate the government, humiliate the legislature in front of the public, and use the newspapers to say that they had no choice. They had to let them out because they had to be paroled for whatever reason. And now, in 1955, there was a state prison system and there was a reformatory system. Okay, now the reformatory was a maximum security institution. Okay, and the state prison was a maximum security institutions. So they were two maximum security institutions for two separate prison sentences. They weren't mixed. Inmates were not mixed. You know, reformatory inmates stayed at the reformatory, or they went to the farm across the street to work on the farm, Concord Farm. State sentence inmates in 1955, the DOC was ordered to purchase more buildings. So they purchased Walpole, they purchased Norfolk, they purchased prison camp in Monroe, they purchased several other facilities, and for the overcrowding of the state prison. So they weren't really at that time considered lower levels. They were just for overcrowding. In 1972, they implemented you know, gradually allowing state sentenced inmates to be put back into the community and go to work release programs. Inmates were doing 3 to 5. So after 2 years, they would allow them to go into a work release and start working, saving some money to be able to provide for their families. This was in 1972, but before that, there was only furloughs, and but um, the reformatory usually up until 1955, they usually would give the inmate a 5-year sentence, and at that time, only district courts were sentencing um, adult and juvenile offenders to the reformatory. And after 1955, they allowed both Superior Court and the district courts to sentence to the reformatory. If you already had a state sentence, um, you were not allowed to get a reformatory sentence. And this is Impact Evaluation Volume 3, New Line Classification during its first year of operation, submitted by Ellen, capital Chayet, Evaluation Specialist, Massachusetts Department of Corrections, Frank A. Hall, Commissioner, May 1978. Okay, this is 1978 now. This is this is the introduction. Massachusetts adheres to the multi-level classification philosophy. Now this is 78. Incoming court. Hold on a minute. This battery's going down. I gotta plug it in. Okay. Massachusetts adheres to the multi-level classification philosophy. Incoming court commitments are traditionally sentenced to one of the two maximum security facilities. MCI Concord, designed to serve the young, relative newcomer to crime, and MCI Walpole, reserved for the older, recidivist, and more serious offender. Okay? From what I heard from inmates in 1978, I guess there was a riot at the reformatory, and they broke into the prison canteen and everything. So Commissioner Hogan transferred like 150 inmates with reformatory sentences to Walpole. Now, there was, you see, the state prisons had their own CMRs, and the Concord Reformatory had separate distinguishable CMRs. Like, Concord Reformatory inmates were not allowed to be put into isolation units, security housing units, but state census inmates were. So Concord had their own regulations, and inside the regulations, there was allowed a transfer in an emergency, but the transfer authorized an emergency transfer, but once the emergency is quelled, then the inmates have to be returned right away. So reformatory inmates could be transferred to the state prison or any of the state prisons. Norfolk. Back then it was mostly Norfolk and Walpole that had walls around it. So any of the two state prisons, they could have. State prison colony is what Norfolk was called. So all the state prisons were identified by state prison colony, state prison work release, state prison. So they could be transferred there in an emergency. But once the emergency is quelled, they had to return them back to the reformatory right away, because at the court, the judge had this choice to either sentence the offender to the reformatory and let him be reformed and rehabilitated and prove himself worthy of a parole release, or to the state prison where you just sit there and rot, until your minimum number, happens, and then you're evaluated whether or not you should receive a parole. So when they transferred these inmates to the reformatory, it was an upgrade in sentence. Okay, it was a judicial act. Okay, now, and there was a statute a long time ago that was initiated before 1955, but in 1955 the words were changed. It was a transfer statute, chapter 127, section 97, that the Commissioner of Correction can transfer any inmate to any institution he wants to. Okay, now that was for state sentence inmates. Concord inmates had their own transfer statutes, because that back then they had the Lyman School for boys, and they had a couple of they had juvenile detentions, and inmates that were incorrigible at these juvenile detentions could be transferred to the maximum security prison at Concord, okay, the reformatory. If they were proved to be incorrigible at the school for boys or juvenile detentions, they could be transferred there until their sentence is complete. So there wasn't anybody doing over 5 years there at that time. Up to 1978, there wasn't no big sentences at all. Okay. Now after the riot, okay, but what happened was Commissioner Hogan, he didn't go by the CMRs for Concord. He decided that he was going to do what he wanted to do. Okay, so he let those inmates stay at Walpole. Okay, and he decided to move Walpole inmates who were sentenced to be punished, not rehabilitated. He transferred all of them to the reformatory. So now these inmates, one inmate I met, murdered some guy for a pack of cigarettes and set him on fire. Now they're at Concord. One guy was murdered 6 guys in a bowling alley. He had bowling pins tattooed all over his body with all their names on it. Now, here these guys are enjoying a reformatory punishment. They had good food. You can go up and get as much milk as you want, as much juice as you want, big piles of food. They had all different organized companies donating stuff to them, all kinds of pairs of Nikes, Nike flip-flops. They had all kinds of jobs there, for, the reformatory inmates supposed to be. They had all kinds of jobs there. They had workshops, wood shops, all kinds of different things, programs, schooling, counseling, and they had recreation. They had an arena in the gym. They had showers. They had a couple of heavy bags. They had all kinds of indoor weights. They had all kinds of outdoor weights. They had a big, huge yard with a big, huge track. They had all kinds of baseball games, horseshoes and basketball and handball, and picnics on 4th of July. You know, you play games for money, chess, checkers, and they had an indoor basketball court. You know, they had a huge movie screen that they showed. They showed movies like every week, once a week. They had a movie night. You know, and it was a reformatory. Now Hogan moved all these Walpole inmates out of the state prison and put them in the reformatory. So he must have found out he did something wrong. So in 1980, okay, he turns around and he changes the name of the Massachusetts Reformatory without legislative permission, without telling the judges, without telling the courts. And he does exactly what they wanted to do back in 1955. Exactly what they wanted to do. He, right here, in Senate document 1955, number 750, page 2, paragraph 7. It will unify the control of all correctional institutions under a single competent administration and permit a reorganized professional correctional staff to carry out aims of modern penology and making good citizens instead of potential enemies of the community. Page 30, paragraph 3. The best correctional systems are utilizing a central reception center, and it is better equipped to meet the inmates' needs. Paragraph 4, page 30. This is a step Massachusetts must take. It requires that all commitments be made to the legal custody of the Commissioner of Corrections and not a specific institution, as is now the case. The designation of a central reception center for the receiving of all commitments of male offenders. You see, in 1980, Commissioner Hogan, they wouldn't let him do this in 1955. So he did it on his own without telling the legislature, without telling the court system. He turned the reformatory into another branch of the state prison and just eliminated the reformatory and decided he's going to reform these inmates the way he wants to. Okay? And he turned the reformatory and called it a new name, the Reception and Diagnostic Center. Just what they wanted to do and got rejected. Okay? So, I mean, when I went in 1985, there wasn't anybody bothering me, so I didn't really bother anybody else. I didn't really care, you know? I mean, I had my jailhouse problems, you know, that everybody had there, you know, money, canteen, visits, you know, normal stuff. And I didn't know anything about what they were doing, so they transferred me to Norfolk. So here I am, these guys that like murdered, you know, 10 people are at Concord living it up, and they transfer me to the state prison at Norfolk. And now I'm with people never ever getting out. And here I am on a reformatory sentence. I mean, it doesn't matter what you're in for. You know, it doesn't matter. I know a guy that went into rob a store, you know, a liquor store, and the kid he was with, he had a gun and he kills the store owner, right? All right, he didn't kill anybody, but he's been in prison for like 30 years. He didn't kill anybody, okay? So it doesn't matter. We're not talking about what a person's in for. We're talking about what the sentence of the court is. The court knows all the facts, okay? The DOC doesn't know nothing, okay? Doesn't know anything, okay? they get the paperwork from the court and they're supposed to follow the orders. Okay, so they transfer me over to Norfolk. Okay, now I didn't care. I mean, I didn't know any better back then. Okay, then they transfer me to a minimum security prison. So, I mean, I'm playing football against other prisons on buses, being bussed around. And then they transfer me to a pre-release, okay? And it was too much for me. I mean, I was too close to freedom, But, and I ended up, walking away. So now, I had a walk-away charge. They call it an escape. I mean, I didn't escape. I mean, I walked away. I mean, I didn't climb over any walls or any fences or anything like that. I just walked away. But they got to call it an escape to make it look good. So, if I'd have just stayed in the reformatory like I was supposed to, and been, subjected to the programs that they were supposed to have, then I would have been, reformed and rehabilitated the proper way, and I wouldn't have had all these problems. So I come back in 1998, and when the reformatory sentence is set up that once you're considered reformed, then they let you out. So if you got sentenced to a maximum term of 20 years, because they go by the maximum term of the punishment of the statute that you've been convicted under. So you get sentenced to 20 years, okay, and then they decide you're reformed and they give you a parole. According to the reformatory law, every year they got to evaluate you and see if you're rehabilitated now, to determine whether or not the rest of your sentence should be terminated. You see, it's a lot of work that they put on the DOC, and they just didn't want to do it. It's like they feel like they had to be, I don't know what they felt like. They just didn't want to do it. So, my parole officer told me, be good for 3 years and we'll terminate your sentence. Now, 4 years later, they didn't terminate my sentence. 10 years later, they didn't terminate my sentence. And then 10 years later, they messed up and they put me back in prison. Now here I am. I'm a reformed, rehabilitated human being. 18 years passed. When I was sentenced to probation and violated my probation and got put away 18 years ago. So now I have 2 kids, a family, and a job, and 2 cars, and here these people are just putting me back in prison, like it's nothing to them. And I start complaining, so I start looking into the reformatory sentence, and I started saying, hey, you people were supposed to terminate my sentence. I mean, what are you doing? I mean, you're turning it into a definite sentence. I mean, I wasn't sentenced to a definite sentence. It's indefinite. It's because you people are supposed to review me once a year while I was on, parole. You didn't do that. Why didn't you do that? Yeah. Now I'm back here for nothing. No new charges. No violations of no regulations. If you just did your job, I wouldn't be here. And they wrote me back, and they ignored me. They said, "Oh, you can't apply for termination. You're not on parole." You see, because they're corrupt. I mean, they since the big mess up in 1978, okay, they had to start concealing that they were corrupt. Okay, so now criminals who knew that they messed up got dirt on these people, the government, the whole entire, I don't think the legislature knew. I don't think the judges knew. They must have found out sooner or later. How could they not know? I mean, they take a reformatory that has a prison, that has a statute that implicates it, that all the judges are using. See, in order to sentence somebody to the reformatory, you couldn't go by the criminal statute that they were convicted under. You had to go by an alternative punishment statute that supersedes the punishment that's implicated in the statute of the crime they're convicted of. So, under Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 279, Section 31 through 33, okay, 31 implicates what institution in Massachusetts is the reformatory, and 32 and 33 allow for the sentences, okay, and 33 allows for the longest sentence, okay, and that supersedes the statute. So even though you're convicted under Chapter 20, Section 4, you're sentenced under Chapter 279, Section 31 to 33. So every sentence is underneath that. Now, because the reformatory is just one number, parole has all the power to determine when that person is going to be released. So here I am back 10 years, and I'm looking up all this stuff, and then I discovered that, there's no reformatory anymore because they mixed the state prisons in there. So now it's not a reformatory anymore. It's a level 4 of the state prison, which is a level 6. So it's not a reformatory anymore. It's a level. So state prisoners that start off as a level 6 get transferred down to level 5, level 4, level 3, level 2, level 1. So now the reformatory is just a level 4. So you got violent criminals there. Now the reformatory inmates are sucked into the state prison system. So at Concord, they're saying, we don't like you, you're going to Walpole. And it's illegal. So finally, some guy in 1985 made an argument that if I was sentenced to the reformatory from a district court, and a district court cannot sentence anybody to the state prison, how can an administrative board transfer me to the state prison once I get in their custody? The bottom line is, okay, the reformatory was a maximum institution. Legislature never changed that. The DOC did what they wanted to do in 1955, and every sentence to the reformatory from at least 1980 were illegal. I counted about 500, all right? Now, something like 30 sentences a year from the district court were being given to the reformatory. District court now. Okay, now, once those guys got in the prison system, they were being transferred to Walpole, Norfolk, wherever the Commissioner of Corrections wanted to transfer them. Okay, so there was no more prison for them to be transferred to. I mean, I had cases where in other countries or whatever, other states had reformatories and penitentiaries, and they might have adapted policies that allowed certain reformatory inmates to be transferred to the state prison if they wanted to, for whatever reasons that they wanted to. But Massachusetts just got rid of the whole reformatory. I mean, and put everybody underneath this program that they developed for the state-sentenced inmates. CAPAS. You do this, and you go to a level 5. You do this, and you go to a level 4. You do this, you go to a level 3. You do this, you go to a level 2. You do this, you go to a level 1. That's not what the reformatory is all about. It's not being bounced around from prison to prison. The reformatory is supposed to be, you stay here and you do these programs until you prove yourself worthy of being reformed. So they're so pissed off at the judges and legislature about this reformatory sentence that parole starts letting out these rapists and these child molesters so that when they go out and commit new crime, they'll be in the papers and they can blame it on the sentence and blame it on the judges, as if the judges were lenient on these offenders. Like, they're giving them 20 years. I mean, parole's letting them out in 2.5. So they're trying to make the judges look bad and the legislatures look bad. So parole, the Department of Public Safety, and the Department of Corrections conspired together against the government because they were angry because they couldn't get their way in 1955. They were mad because it seemed like the inmates got their way in 1955. I mean, in 1955, everybody was family back then. I mean, the government was not trying to. These children, a lot of them were fatherless because their family fought in the wars, and they were trying to help these kids, but the administration was kind of feeling like they were being babysitters, and that they were kind of feeling I guess maybe humiliated because the inmates seem to run everything. They seem to get whatever they want. And I noticed that in 1987, the inmates at Norfolk, now at Norfolk, when I went into the legal room, there was like 10 guys that were highly intelligent, that were doing the law, doing legal work, and there was typewriters available. You could take them back to your cell, and there was copy machines, and these inmates were fighting their own cases, trying to, help themselves, and they were helping other inmates, okay? But other inmates were doing political things, trying to, they actually got the right for inmates to vote. And so now politicians were coming in to get their votes, and and then they put that guy Willie Horton. They put him. See, had Willie Horton on a CAPA. This new 1972 program where they take inmates level 6, level 5, level 4, level 3, level 2, but they're not rehabilitating them at all. It's just, I mean, really, you go to NA and AA and stay there for 9 months, and then you get moved. There wasn't no, go to counsel and go to psychiatric help or it was just basically stay here for 14 months, then you'll get to go there. So Willie Horton, who I saw personally face to face, I mean, the guy was crazy. He was crazy. You could tell he was angry, and I don't know what was going on, but he was crazy, and I think they used him to get attention, because the DLC wants to blame it on the judges and the politicians, the unions. I mean, now the God unions are so powerful, because they've humiliated the court systems and the legislature, and but it's all they've had to hide this secret that they illegally abolished the Reformatory in 1980, and that 500 sentences were illegal a year. Okay, you got a district court, and he sentences 26 inmates, offenders, a year to the Massachusetts Reformatory. Okay, it's called the Concord sentence. In 1955, all the institutions were called MCI at the town that it was located in. So, because it was at Concord, MCI, Concord. Okay, but it didn't change that it was the Massachusetts Reformatory. Just like the state prison was called MCI Walpole. But it didn't change that, just because it was called MCI Walpole, it didn't change that Walpole, that was the state prison. So you got the state prison and the state reformatory. So if we're to 30 sentences a year from a district court, okay, well, where did they get, where was the reformatory? Because they were sentenced under GL chapter 279, section 31 to 33. You got to remember that. They weren't sentenced under their criminal statute, because in order to get an alternative punishment to the crime that you're convicted of, an alternative to the punishment that's stated in the statute of the crime that you're convicted of, all right, the sentence to the reformatory has to supersede that punishment, that statute. So you're sentenced under all Concord commitments are sentenced under not the statute, not the punishment in the statute. Okay, once they're convicted, okay, they're sentenced under chapter 279, section 31 to 33. Okay, so we're now section 31 of chapter 271 implicates which institution in Massachusetts will be for the operation of the reformatory. Now, where did they go? Where were they sentenced to? Where's the reformatory they were sentenced to? Where are they going to be reformed and rehabilitated? Okay, now listen to this. This is federal judge Nancy Gertner. Plaintiff challenges the execution of his sentence while he was incarcerated from 1985 to 2005. He claims the defendant illegally abolished the Massachusetts Reformatory without permission from legislature, and while the judicial branch continued to sentence offenders to the Massachusetts Reformatory. Okay, so she knows I'm complaining about that. Discussion. Okay, I was allowed to proceed in form of pauperous. My complaint went through, okay, and then she must have got paid off. Okay, and here's her order. Memorandum in order, discussion. Okay, so that's the order that she made. So at the beginning she was, all for it. Here it is. Let's see. That's enlargement of time. I've got a stack of paperwork here with. I mean, even the Middlesex County District Attorney's Office knows about this argument. Memorandum and decision. Oh, yeah. Here's. On January 12, 2005, the defendant filed a motion pursuant to Rule 30, Massachusetts Criminal Procedure, post-conviction relief, alleging that he could only serve a Concord sentence in a reformatory. Okay, I use that as grounds to file a motion for a new trial. Okay, because they sentenced me to a prison that didn't exist. And they're trying to tell me that it isn't their fault. It's the Department of Corrections' fault. Okay. Okay, they know that I complained that turning the reformatory into a reception and diagnostic center, okay, made the reformatory a branch of the state prison. Okay, I let them know that, and underneath the separation of powers, they had no constitutional right to change a prison, to change the reformatory into a level 4 of the state prison. The Commonwealth moved to dismiss on the basis that a motion challenging one's placement in a particular institution within the prison system is civil and should be properly brought against the Commissioner of Corrections. And then they try to say that Diana Klopmeyer, of course. I mean, she is so corrupt it's sick, you know, and she tried to say that I was sentenced in '85, so the enactment wasn't made. It was made in changing the reformatory into reception diagnosis was made in 1980, so what does that got to do with him? They just do whatever they want. I mean, I'm trying to say, hey, you sentenced me to a prison that did not exist. I had found a case, with similar circumstances where, a person was sentenced to a prison that did not exist. And the court said, well, the sentence is illegal, so you have to resentence them. I mean, they didn't have to, let me out, but basically they had to resentence me, and that would have, given me some grounds, for a new trial to go in there and, get, do other things. So basically what I'm trying to say is they knew about it. They knew about the reformatory being illegally abolished. And Diana Klopmeyer, she is, she's corrupted a couple of other complaints, I've had against the DLC that turned out later on, like one of my complaints was freed 13 inmates in 2007, and I had it before her in 2003. And she helped another attorney, file a case under my name using my indigency statute without my permission, without my knowledge. I didn't even know, that this guy was filing your case in my name. You never told me. But instead of asking for verification that I was indigent, like my SSI and my food stamps, she just let him do it. Oh, okay, yeah, okay, I'll let you do it. Well, how come every single case I filed, over 10, different arguments about different things, motions, I mean, you might file 10 different pleadings on one different, complaint. So how could it be, when you initially filed a complaint, it costs money, to filing fee. So I had to prove that whether I had money or not. I had to, but this guy, she just allowed him, uh, without no proof, based on his word, because it was what he was filing was kind of something that hurt me, and she remembers, you know, what she did wrong to me. So, and this was in 2012 when she did that. But in 2003, I told her that inmates were being unlawfully incarcerated. 2007, I told the governor. He found 13 inmates. So, 2012, she's trying to help destroy my name, my reputation. I mean, So when I die, if people will read that, and that's bad things, So, but basically, what I'm looking for now is Judge Nancy Gertner's ruling. I mean, I have all the information right here about the here's what they made. Here's the recommendations they made for Concord Reformatory in 1955. On page 36, and I think it's all under the 1955 770 or 777. But in 1955, House number 3100, page 5, number 16. House rejects changing sentencing laws and criminal statutes that would eliminate sentences to a specific institution and would have courts make all male offenders sentenced to the legal custody of the Commissioner of Corrections. Okay? Okay, and House number 3034, they ordered the state prisons to maintain 3 additional state prison camps. These state prison camps had nothing to do with the reformatory. But under this, I didn't write down where it was taken from, but the recommendations for the reformatory at Concord are as follows. The clothing industry should be abandoned. The furniture industry should be expanded. All industry buildings should be made fireproof or replaced with modern buildings. See, that's the reason why they moved state sentence inmates out of there in the late 1800s, because the prison was falling apart. It wasn't strong enough to hold these more sophisticated criminal type of offenders being sentenced there. Recommended Concord Reformatory be abandoned, but we realize that this is impractical. The Wessel Committee found the Reformatory to be more in need of a thorough house cleaning than any other prison. Changes to the Reformatory, recommended by the Wessel Committee. In the Reformatory, at the present time, the sentence judge choose between a prison sentence. Okay, the rules of the parole board should be amended for reformatory sentence and every offense sentence under the deficit should be seen no later than after they have served 6 months, 2 or 3 years effective period of supervision, long enough on parole, any longer an obstruction to the ultimate rehabilitation of the parolee. Okay, so I was on parole for 4 years. They told me be good for 3 and we'll terminate your sentence. The law, under General Laws, Chapter 127, Section 130A, says 1 year. Okay, over here in page 70 of the Senate report, and I don't really know which one but it says 2 or 3 years effective period of supervision, long enough on parole, any longer an obstruction to the ultimate rehabilitation of the parolee. Okay, so to keep their jobs, they kept me on, parole for 10 years, and then because of a mistake that parole made, they sent me back to prison, rehabilitated, right, and ruined my whole life, my family, and everything. And to this day, I'm still fighting for justice, and that's all they're trying to do is kill me, torture me, kill me. They're using all taxpayers' money to fund, all kinds of torture techniques, pay junkies and losers to try to set me up. Have doctors putting me on Thorazine because I'm complaining about, what the government's doing to me. So what they do to you, if you go and complain about it to a counselor or a psychiatrist or something, and then they put you on more medication. They put you on medication, and then later on they say, well, he's delusional, he's schizoaffective, he's nuts, So, that anything that's being run by the government, everything's corrupt. The whole system needs to be like, shoveled into the ocean, and new people need to be put in there. Everybody who's a head leader of Massachusetts, they're all bought and paid for, since 1978. There's no more, because the system went corrupt. So they had to keep putting corrupt people in there to make sure that their secrets stay buried. So now they're torturing and murdering decent people, to keep it hidden. They're killing people to keep it hidden. So somebody's got to go in there and fix this problem. I mean, I write letters, I can't explain it all, and I did the best I could, and they just started sending more people after me, and doing worse things to me that I can prove. I mean, I had x-rays done on my teeth, and to find out that there's things in my root canals. What am I going to do? They got the tracking devices. They're tracking me all over the place. I mean, so how much can you possibly write? I mean, to prove all this stuff. I mean, so I have to stay on the issues that I can prove. Okay, that they illegally abolished Massachusetts Reformatory, and by 2000, the judges knew. The judges knew. Nancy Gerdner knew. Federal Judge Nancy Gerdner. Federal Judge George O'Toole knew. Diana Kottmeyer knew. Justice Gantz knew. Prasad knew. Stephen Neal knew. They did away with it in 1994. You know, why they do it away with the reformatory sentence in 1994? You know, they weren't following it. If you got a 20-year reformatory sentence, I know a guy who's doing 30 years, you know, he's still in. He's in a supermax. I met him in 2004, okay, and he's in a supermax. He's in a supermax. He got 30-year sentence. They're not obeying it, anyways. It's just, you know, so why they do away with it? You know, because I made complaints about it, probably. Not at that time. So they must have found out. They must have had people. See, that's why they started to come down on the inmates in prison, because they were finding out things from doing their research. You know, no, they weren't just sitting around saying, oh, how can we, you know, bother the DOC, or how can we bother the court systems? No, somebody probably came in and said, hey, you know, I'm having, I got sentenced to 20 years, and, you know, I'd like to put in for revise and revoke. And during the research, they found out, hey, you know, you're not supposed to be here. You're on a reformatory sentence, you know, and so, because when I wrote letters to the Commissioner of Corrections in 2002, saying, 2003, saying that I was going to tell all the inmates about the reformatory sentence, they kicked 62 inmates out of a unit at the Supermax and put me in there with 14 inmates, okay, and they tortured the shit out of me, trying to make me die of a heart attack. So they're scared of, they know they corrupted, you know, they know that 500 sentences were illegal, and the DAs, you know, the court system, the judge is at fault. You know, you can't sentence somebody to a prison that don't exist. It's an illegal sentence. It's an illegal sentence that only a judge can correct. They're trying to tell me I got to sue the DOC. What am I going to sue the DOC for? I wrote a letter to them, you know. Oh, here it is right here. Okay. Oh, no, that's another one. I wrote a letter to the DOC, and they, you know, June 22nd, 2004, and I have received your letter dated March 13, 2004 concerning your sentence structure. Request for lower security placement and allegations of staff harassment. I mean, you know, it doesn't really say, you know, anything. My letter probably did, but I mean, you know, here I am. I mean, you know, they all knew. So after 1985, they knew. They knew. Even when I filed my case with Justice Gantz in from Walpole 10 block, and I had to go in there on video camera. Okay, they didn't take me to the courthouse. You know, even in his decision that he wrote that I don't have anymore, I lost a lot of paperwork. Okay, he secretly told the DOC. Okay, I was in 10 block then. Secretly told them, you know, this kid is doing a reformatory sentence. You just upgraded his sentence to a state prison sentence by transferring him to Walpole. So what did they do? When I wrote them and I told them I'm going to tell every inmate doing a reformatory sentence that their sentence is illegal. So what did they do? So they clear out 62 inmates out of J1 in the Supermax, Susan Baranowski Correctional Center, and they put me in it with 14 inmates. And then they put other inmates they decided, Romney and Maloney decided, let's just put inmates in here that we want to get rid of. Inmates that will live 10 years if we leave them alone. But if we contaminate their foods, if we harass them, constantly stress them out, they'll live 3 years. So I watched 3 inmates die, murdered by the guards' tactics in that unit. And they worked on me. They worked on me from August of 2003 to July of 2005. And if it wasn't for God, I mean, I would have been dead, but if you don't believe in God, then I really can't tell you what happened. But, God saved my life. Jesus. One of the guys said to me, hey, where's your buddy Jesus? Was torturing me, right? And I said, oh, he's giving you time to repent, And, from what I hear, they're still torturing inmates there. They're still making inmates kill themselves. So nothing's stopped. I mean, because the whole system needs to be cleaned out. All the heads of the mess. One of the guards sent this inmate to me with a statute that orders all the heads of the Department of Massachusetts to meet together twice a year with the House Speaker, right? And told the inmate to give it to me. In other words, here's what you're fighting, Steve. So they're all in cahoots with each other. So, does anybody care about, little children's fathers that are locked up in this warped system? That are being murdered and tortured in prison or taught to become better criminals, or just, being. The guard unions there used to be, there was like 10 guards, at Concord for like 600 inmates. Now there's like 2 guards for, every 4 inmates in Massachusetts. So they're making a living off of, not rehabilitating anybody and keeping them all pissed off so that when they get out, they commit more crimes. It's a big business. Now they release dangerous sex offenders and they pay people $70,000 to $250,000 a year to determine that a rapist or a child molester is dangerous, and then they tell the rapist or the child molester to call them once a year, just so they can make just so they can keep their shelves stocked. And then, I'm not a whistleblower. I'm a victim. I'm a victim. They won't leave me alone. I got more dirt than this. They just don't want to stop bothering me. So I'm figuring God, like he did with the Pharaoh, of Egypt with Moses in the Bible, he just wanted Moses to keep going back and telling the Pharaoh what he was going to do. And, because God wanted to, show that, this is his world. This is his land. These are his people. These criminals that are running things around here and torturing people and turning these prison systems into donut shops. These are out of control evil people. It's not the devil making them do it. The devil don't make anybody do anything. They're evil people. The devil ain't making nobody do nothing. The devil, punishes sinners. He doesn't help them. How many times have you ever heard these people who sacrifice animals, to get powers? What they end up going They end up getting arrested and put in prison. I mean, the devil don't give anybody powers. I mean, look at Mr. Crowley. I mean, the devil don't. There's not some devil guy that if you sacrifice like a goat or a human body, he gives you all kinds of powers or something like that. Isn't what happens. There's not no the that isn't people are evil, and the devil punishes them. Who's considered the devil back in the days, with people like the police, because they came to arrest the criminals, so they considered them evil. The tax collectors, they're devil, because they were taking money from the people, so they could help out with military, the roads, the running water. Oh, they wanted all that stuff, but they don't want to pay taxes, so they were the devil. Whoever was a tax collector was a devil, and judges will, put someone away. He was a devil. He's a devil, so, I mean, God's the devil, because he punishes sinners. And these people are just evil. They're not being run by the devil. The devil made me do it. I mean, do angels, demons appear to people and tell them, do this and do that? Well, probably, who knows? I don't know. They probably do, but you still do it. You're the one who does it. If a demon appears to you and tells you to, do something, then pray to God. Say, God, can you help me? This demon's bothering me, or whatever. If a criminal's trying to force you to do something, pray to God. Ask him to help you. But this whole system is, disgusting. Judges are just so corrupt, it's sick. I'm not saying all of them, but the ones that are running things are. The ones that are running things are. I had child support judges being controlled by somebody, putting me away, for not paying child support while I'm in therapy, while I got a lawsuit going, while I'm injured, while I'm on pain medication, while I got, splints prescribed to me by a doctor for both my hands. Yeah, I can work, I'm in the middle of a lawsuit. I got an attorney. Yeah, I can work. So they put me in prison. All because of this Concord stuff, this reformatory stuff, and other stuff I know about how the guards torture inmates and, what techniques they use and how it feels, what it makes them do. It turns them into sickos. They go out in the street, after being tortured by these guards, and little things like slamming doors, is making them probably beat their wives or beat their children, or, or turn into chronic drug addicts or alcoholics. I'm going to make a tape about, how they torture people, how they make them kill themselves, these inmates, next. I got, I know, believe me, I felt it, I've experienced, I know how they do it, and I watched how it affected people, I watched what it did. I saw one guy, right, now, his whole entire neck, from here, was one big mass of scars that he made with a little tiny razor from a Bic razor. His whole entire neck, and his whole forearms, both of them, from little tiny slices. He'd go up to the correctional, to the guard, and he would go right in front of him, and they would start laughing. Again, oh my God. They did it to this guy for 22 years. These are the type of people that are getting paid $35, $40 an hour, sometimes even $65, because they're all giving each other overtime. And if somebody decent goes in there to try to work in there, they'll pay an inmate to jump the guy. Counselors go in there and try to help these inmates, and they'll pay a rapist to and turn their backs and let the counselor get raped. It was done in Concord. They allowed this counselor to get raped by a rapist. Because she was trying to help people, trying to help inmates. That's why priests don't go in there. They got one priest, and he's in there smoking a cigarette. He's staying out of the picture. You know, everybody's scared. To go against these people. So your children are gonna grow up, and they're gonna work for these people, and they're gonna end up either having a choice to either follow the multitude and enjoy the benefits, or goodbye. You know, goodbye. They're gonna. When Commissioner Dennehy tried to do the right thing, okay, they passed the guard union now. The guard union, okay, these unions, okay. The unions were started to help people. Now it's to control the government, okay. And they tied a big, huge balloon, a rat, on her car, slashed all her tires, and sent death threats to her house. That's the guard union. They were torturing the crap out of me. They didn't care. They were having a ball. They were having a ball. Here I am, a guy that I broke into a couple of houses when I was a kid. And like three. I got nothing out of one, $60 out of another, and the other, maybe two. And nothing out of the other. One I went with some kid because I was dating his girlfriend. The other one, I was trying to date this pretty girl that I liked, and her boyfriend was a criminal, so I started hanging around with him, and I had to rob my friend's house. I was stupid, stupid kid. I fell off a building when I was 2.5. I was stupid, I liked this girl, and the other one I didn't get nothing out of. One of them I think I actually, thought of doing, for the, to impress this girl, and I didn't get nothing out of it, The other two, but I was a kid, and I went to, whatever I did, I went to prison for something I didn't do. All right, so I was in from 1984 to 1988. What have I done wrong since then? Since I grew up, matured, and learned, right from wrong, and what have I done since then? Nothing. Nothing worthy of, and it's this system is just a mess. You can't be scared of these criminals. Somebody's got to change. Somebody's got to change this. They use the taxpayers' money to torture people who go against the government now. I had a lawsuit. My hands are injured for life. Okay, and I had to settle, for short money because my life was being ruined. I ended up homeless. I had no money. I had no income. And I figured, Jesus, let me get rid of these people. They're probably the ones that are doing this to me. I didn't, but the government, I tried to, negotiate with these people, and they just are so powerful that they can corrupt everybody that they just don't care because there's no one brave enough to go against them. Nobody's brave enough to go against them, it seems. And that's what Jewish people are supposed to be for. Jewish people are supposed to do God's work until death. Okay? I'm Jewish. Okay? And Jewish people are supposed to do God's work until death. Justice. tear down their altars, tear down their high places. Okay? I mean, these people are leading people. Criminals own their own houses. The good guys got, what do they got? You know? But in the justice system, I mean, if you can't go to a judge to get justice anymore, I mean, stop killing Muslims. Stop saying Hitler was a bad guy. I mean, it's happening right here in Massachusetts. So stop pointing the finger at Charles Manson. Stop pointing the finger at Ted Bundy. Stop pointing the finger at, all these, people that, did criminal stuff to get what they wanted, or take what they want, or keep what they have, because, I mean, it's disgusting, but my next video will be about how they torture inmates, how the techniques that they use and how it feels, on the inmate, and then how they feel when they get out. I can imagine, how many people, innocent people, are out there getting hurt because they've been using these techniques, for over 20 years. So I can imagine, when they used to let these child rapists out, and these rapists out, now they're scared to go back to prison. So now they're not only raping people, they're kidnapping them and hiding them in basements and making them suffer, and then murdering them after they're done with them, probably, because they don't want to get caught now, So they're doing the same thing that the government does to people who are witnesses against their crimes, getting rid of their victims, getting rid of their witnesses,